So before we begin discussing the major topics in this week in racing, I'd like to first express my condolences to the family of Greg Hodnett, a Pennsylvania sprint car driver who was killed last night in what can only be described as a very brutal crash. Again, anytime this happens in racing, it's a mourning time. This is a dangerous sport, and we hate to see it happen to anybody, anywhere. So, again, my extreme condolences to the family, friends, and fans of Greg Hodnett. So the twists and turns of the Alonso soap opera that has swept the nation, the country, the world, everywhere, continues to surprise and amaze us. And one thing that seemed like it was really picking up steam this week was rumors that Fernando Alonso would not be full-time in Indycar next year. He would not be full-time in F1 next year. He would be full-time in the NASCAR Monster Energy Cup Series. But if you look a little bit deeper into this, you would see that for the most part, it's speculation and essentially a big smokescreen. A lot of this rumor originated from a tweet that was penned by Adam Stern. Now, Adam Stern is a guy I've quoted several times on here. He's a pretty reliable source of information when it comes to silly season, the rumor mill, and things coming out on the business side of racing. And for many people, he is as well. So when he tweeted out a tweet that seemed to imply that Toyota was going to be forcing or would be able to force Alonso to maybe go to NASCAR next year as a full-time option, that had a lot of people talking because of how credible Stern has been. But if we actually look at the quote and read it, you'll see that this particular quote really doesn't have a basis in fact or a basis in any kind of actual subject matter. This is purely a speculative piece. The quote itself reads, "Given his WEC contract with Toyota and stated aim of winning the Endurance Championship to add to his 2 F1 World titles and recent Le Mans victory, it would make sense for Alonso to throw his lot in with the current NASCAR frontrunners Toyota for 2019 and then gear up for a full IndyCar season and perhaps select NASCAR outings with a Chevy team in 2020. So that's a piece that comes from racefans.net, and nothing against them, but generally speaking, I don't think me or many other people go to racefans.net as their first source for motorsport news or breaking motorsport news. This was clearly a speculative piece, clearly an op-ed piece, something where a writer was saying, or just kind of thinking out loud, like what I do here on this channel. But you don't see my quotes ending up on Adam Stern's thing. So it was a little bit weird that this kind of came out because, again, this is kind of like, again, speculation. This is the kind of things we've seen in the comment section, people saying, well, okay, Alonso could go to NASCAR if Toyota wanted him there or didn't want him to be with a Honda engine, didn't want him to be with a Chevy engine. I don't know. There's some things, there's a lot of stretches here to be made if Alonso was to make NASCAR starts next year. Number one, let's assume this is a Toyota deal and he wants to go and be with a Toyota team. Which Toyota teams are left? Joe Gibbs Racing is clearly far and away the front-running Toyota team. Furniture Row Racing is closing for next year, so that eliminates that option. There's a potential that the 95 car for Levine Family Racing could be a Toyota team next year, but that seems to be a seat that's pegged for Daniel Suarez. So, I mean, BK Racing maybe? I don't know. There's not really a place where Alonso could fit into the current NASCAR silly season. And even if he did, if somehow Gibbs was able to loan a 5th car out to another team to prepare to kind of skirt around the NASCAR rule to do that, is Alonso himself particularly interested in going to NASCAR full-time, at least at this point in his career? His stated goal since the beginning has been the Triple Crown. Now, could Alonso not do a full season of IndyCar racing next year? I think that's incredibly possible. We've heard all the talk about Honda potentially not being particularly open to the fact that Alonso would be driving one of their engines next year. That was evidenced by the unbadged car, which carried a Honda engine that he tested. There's also been rumors and speculation that Alonso himself wasn't particularly impressed with Indy cars on a road course. He didn't think, this is speculation again, or at least a rumor, that he wasn't impressed with how the car performed. So there's a potential that, hey, we'll just see Fred next year at the Indy 500. And, you know, we could see him at a Chevy team. But considering one of the stories we're going to have later in this episode, it's kind of unlikely that maybe even Fernando could be in an Andretti affiliated car with a Chevy engine. There's a lot of things up in the air. And again, it seems like, at least from what Zach Brown has told us, and I'm going to, at this point, trust what he has said in regards to the Alonso and McLaren and all of these pieces coming together, that it'll be at the end of October when we'll find out. Remember, Alonso said at the end of the F1 break he would announce, or at least have a decision made on what his future held. That's when we got his announcement that he would be leaving F1. So, looking at the timetable, end of October, we're going to have all these answers. Right now we don't. We've got a lot of rumors, speculation, and a lot of talk. Speaking of IndyCar silly season, we finally got an answer to what Harding Racing's plans are for next year. And ironically enough, they don't involve McLaren like a lot of the rumor mill was suggesting. It involves the Steinbrenners of Yankee baseball fame, particularly George Michael Steinbrenner, who has been instrumental in the development of Indy Lights driver Colton Herta. Herta will be one of two drivers that will drive for the Harding Steinbrenner Racing team for next year. Herta and Pato O'Ward, who had a very impressive IndyCar debut at Sonoma, will be the two drivers, and ironically enough, they were the two drivers who were the top dogs in Indy Lights this year. O'Ward taking the championship over Herta. Now, you may have heard me Freudian slip a couple times and say Andretti in that intro. It's because these cars are essentially going to become Andretti junior team cars. Essentially the Toro Rosso to Andretti Autosport's Red Bull, if that would make any sense. Now, how this is going to be pulled off, because of course there are competing manufacturers between the two teams. One team, Harding Racing, uses Chevrolet engines. The other team, Andretti Autosport, uses Hondas. And certainly neither Ilmor Engineering or Honda Performance Development are going to be particularly interested with data being shared on the engine side between these two teams. So what has happened? Well, according to Jim Aiello at the Indy Star, Andretti Technologies, which heads up the Formula E program for Andretti Autosport, will loan out parts, including suspension bits, shocks, and dampers, like we saw at Sonoma, and pretty much the whole parts of the car, essentially the whole car except for the tub and the engine, will be loaned out from Andretti Technologies to Harding Racing for this team, essentially bringing the Andretti assault on IndyCar at the current moment to 6 cars total that they will have a hand in preparing. So this is going to be very interesting, because we did see what kind of pace Pato O'Ward was able to get out of this Andretti prepared chassis with the Chevrolet engine. He was right up at the front, right up, mixing it up with the big dogs, the Penske's, the Andretti's, and the Ganassis. So going into next year, this is going to be a great opportunity for two young drivers, they're both teenagers for God's sakes, to be able to really shine and really show their stuff. They're both being hired, which is awesome, even though Pato O'Ward does have the $1 million from the Mazda Road to Indy program scholarship. Apparently, yeah, he's a hired driver. It's not just a situation where they're coming in and saying, hey, you've got $1 million, let's bring you in. And that comes down to the Yankee baseball connection with George Michael Steinbrenner IV. Now, George Michael has been passionate about racing his whole life, according to the interviews he's done currently. And it seems like at 21 years old, we've got a team owner that is going to be instrumental in the future of IndyCar racing. And considering his connections with Yankee baseball, this opens up the possibility for a lot of exciting things coming down the line. Steinbrenner himself name-dropped some big companies when talking about potential sponsorships he could leverage for the team. The one that I found the most interesting, and the one he name-dropped specifically that wasn't tied to an automobile manufacturer, was Pepsi. That could be very interesting. That could be a lot of fun. It's always nice to see big names becoming involved in the sport of IndyCar, the sport of auto racing. And Pepsi has an association with some NASCAR teams through the Mountain Dew, I believe. I think Pepsi also will come on to a car every now and then. But outside of that, we don't really see a whole lot from that particular side of the aisle in terms of sponsorship. So it'll be fun and interesting to see where this Harding Steinbrenner thing ends up going. And by the way, coming back to the first story of the day, talking about Fernando Alonso, there's a potential that the third car could be brought into this team to prepare for Fernando Alonso. The possibility is out there in the open, and it could happen. This is not going to be the only team that expands for next year in IndyCar, by the way. Rahal, Letterman, Lanigan is looking at expanding to a third car. And we just got confirmation that Carlin Racing will run 3 cars next year. The front runner for that seat seems to be Ed Jones, who is out at Ganassi, which essentially turns that team into the island of misfit Ganassi drivers. So really, a lot of positives going into next season for IndyCar, and there are going to be some big grids next year. It would not surprise me, at least at the current, what we're looking at, current expansion rates, there could be 30 cars at some races next year outside of the Indianapolis 500. And that is just fantastic. So here's a late-breaking, in fact it broke right before I started recording this video, story that Ryan Newman, who currently drives for Richard Childress Racing in the NASCAR Cup Series, will now be driving full-time for 3 years the number 6 car for Roush Fenway Racing. Hey look, another baseball connection in this video. So yeah, Ryan Newman gets the call to replace Trevor Bayne in the 6. This is interesting. This is a little bit unexpected, not 100% unexpected. I think Claire B. Lang was one of the people who kind of suggested to Jack Rouse that, hey, would Ryan Newman be one of the people that you might look at for next year? And Roush gave her a non-answer. But we now have confirmation that it's Newman in the seat. So this has a lot of interesting ripple effects in terms of the NASCAR silly season. It means that potentially, more or less, Matt Kenseth is back on the market. I don't know if Matt Kenseth was ever seriously considered to fill in or replace Trevor Bayne full-time in the 6. He may have just been an experiment to see whether or not it was the driver or the car. We saw at Indianapolis that it might have been the driver because of the performance that Kenseth was able to put on at that race. But I'm actually kind of surprised that Newman got the call over Kenseth. Now, maybe it's based on the fact that Newman has a little bit more recent prior experience. I think he's won a race more recently than Kenseth. I can't remember if specifically that has happened or not. No. Kenseth won at Phoenix last year. So, yeah, I don't know. Then that would be, yeah, I don't, that one's a head scratcher then. Because I don't know exactly what Roush sees in Newman. This isn't 2003 anymore. Newman isn't kind of the hot prospect on the block. What I suppose he does see in him is an experienced driver who would be able to lead the team, be able to possibly coach Ricky Stenhouse up a little bit, and, you know, again, improve the overall competitiveness of that team. But from the perspective of the way I'm looking at it, why would you not go with Kenseth? Because Kenseth has already kind of integrated himself into the team. It's possible that Newman's bringing some sponsorship money with him. I think that's kind of been some of the speculation, and it wouldn't honestly surprise me. Another ripple effect of this is what happens with the RCR number 31, a car that's been a stalwart of NASCAR since, I think, you know, the early 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s. What happens to that car? Who goes into there? I think the smart money would be on Ty Dillon, but I did some looking up prior to this that he had signed what was described as a multi-year contract with Germain Racing, which of course is the 13 car. So is there some sort of an out in his contract that could get him out of that car and go team with his brother at Richard Childress Racing? I would think there is, probably, because of the fact that RCR provides essentially the entire car to Germain Racing, provides technical support there. There's also speculation that a guy like Daniel Hemrick could go into that seat. I would love to see Daniel Hemrick there. I think he has proven himself quite well in the Xfinity Series, as potentially could get a championship over there. But, you know, I just don't. It's one of those things where I think he's not going to bring money. So, I suspect the way we've seen Richard Childress Racing operate has been how much cash you got, or how well do you know Pop. So it's, you know, I don't see this going the way that I think a lot of people would want to see it go, which I think is Hemrick. You could see, I mean, could Trevor Bayne or somebody like go into that seat? I don't think so. Could Kenseth go into that seat? Doubtful. Yeah, maybe Tyler Reddick. There's a potential there. Obviously, there's a certain glut of cars or drivers that, you know, are all moving around the page right now. And certainly a lot of drivers coming out of the development ranks of Xfinity and trucks, and some of them that have quite a bit of money. Well, I don't know. We'll just have to see how it all goes, how it all works out. I don't know. Let me know down in your comments. I'm possibly forgetting someone, leaving someone out in terms of the speculation of who could go to that seat. So, yeah, Newman in the 6. What do you think about that? This has been This Week in Racing. That's the end of the show. A lot to talk about, despite the fact that there's not really any major bombshell announcements, or I guess, you know, just completely mind-boggling things, completely out of left field things to talk about. So let me know what you thought of this entire week down in the comments. Let me know if I left anything out. Congratulations and good luck to Dale Earnhardt Jr. Coming back to the cockpit for what may be his final race. But I wouldn't hold my breath on that, at Richmond, I think, tonight. So that will be exciting. Yeah, continue to support the channel. Really appreciate it. Really love you guys watching. And again, one last condolence and shout out to the family of Greg Hodnett. Man, that's a shame. So thank you guys so much for watching. This has been David Land on YouTube, and we'll see you in the next video.